Hello, everybody. We are back again. Goody and Johnny Mill with the movies. We are going to be doing episode 21 tonight. For episode 21, we are doing Spider-Man Far From Home, the latest film in the MCU. Before we get to that,
Alcoholic beverage-wise, I am still drinking Singa, Thailand's finest, but Chris has switched it up.
I'm doing a Blue Point blueberry ale. Nice, light, and crisp to end the night. So, episode 21, we are in the 20s. We are doing Spider-Man, the sequel to Homecoming. This is going to be probably a little bit of a different style review. So we just got done doing Child's Play, where John and I were pretty much in agreement. With Far From Home, I think we're going to disagree a little bit on the film.
I think so too. So, Spider-Man Homecoming, not a perfect movie, but I enjoyed it immensely. I enjoyed the new Spider-Man. I enjoyed Aunt May. I really thought Michael Keaton did a really good job.
Great.
He really brought
a
lot
great villain
to that movie. And I was looking forward, conceptually, just in theory, to the next Spider-Man movie, which I knew they were going to do.
Yeah.
And then when I saw the previews for Spider-Man Far From Home, and I'm like, every preview that I saw, I'm sitting there going like, it's not doing much for me. It's like, they finally got around to Mysterio. There's a reason why it's taken this long to get to Mysterio. Mysterio, to me, is one of... He's a somewhat of an interesting villain in the Spider-Man cast of characters, but he is definitely one of the lamest villains. And he's also a little tricky to do, because in the comic books, he's really just a special effects guy, does illusions and, but he's a really...
Which they worked into the film.
Yeah, but he's a really goofy villain, and there's a reason why. And Mysterio has been a villain in Spider-Man for a long time. I mean, first appearance of Mysterio was Spider-Man 13. He's been around since the early 60s. You look at all the villains, from that way, all the main villains, and he was a main villain for Spider-Man. You look at all of those main villains, Spider-Man villains that were released in the 60s, most of them have been adapted at some point in either a Spider-Man movie or in a Marvel movie, in some capacity. Almost every one. The only one that they haven't done yet, which to me is, I don't know why they haven't, is Kraven the Hunter. Why they haven't done Kraven the Hunter is beyond me. But Mysterio, I was sitting there going to myself, they may never do Mysterio because he's just so goofy. Yeah. And now they finally did it, and I was like, I wasn't really looking forward to Mysterio, I was hoping they were going to do him well. And then the whole thing about being in Europe as opposed to the United States, I was like, all right, change of scenery. But everything I saw just didn't do much for me. I didn't really go into the movie that excited. But the movie was actually very different from what I expected. But I still didn't really like it that much. But you, I think you did like it.
I enjoyed the film. I didn't enjoy it as much as Homecoming. I liked Homecoming a lot more. I think...
I mean, to me, I gave Homecoming 3 stars.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think that was a... listen...
I wouldn't say a solid, rock-solid 3 stars, but
listen, since 2000 and... What was it, 1? When the first Spider-Man, when the Tobey Maguire film came out? Mm-hmm. There's been 3, then 2, and now this is the second one for Tom Holland. 3, 5, 7, and then Into the Spider-Verse as well, because I count that. Into the Spider-Verse is a fantastic Spider-Man movie.
Which I have not seen.
You need to see that movie. That movie is unbelievably good. If you have not seen Into the Spider-Verse yet, please watch it. It's on Netflix right now.
Won the Academy Award.
It did for Best Animation, as well as should have. And it beat out The Incredibles 2 and Wreck-It Ralph 2 by Disney. And I'll tell you right now, it definitely did, because that movie was great. Love Spider-Man 2. That's still probably my favorite Spider-Man movie with Sam Raimi and Tobey Maguire.
With Dr. Octopus.
With Doc Ock. That, to me, was my favorite Spider-Man film of those 3. I thought that was the best one by far. I liked Andrew Garfield. I just did not think the Amazing Spider-Man films were well written, unfortunately.
Well, the first one with Andrew Garfield
That wasn't bad.
wasn't bad.
No, that wasn't bad.
The second one
That was terrible.
was
the Jamie Foxx
horrendous,
one.
which I was very upset about because I really liked Emma Stone.
Yes,
Gwen Stacy.
I thought she was really
I thought she
good
was
as Gwen
good.
Stacy. I thought she
I
was great.
hated Sally Field as Aunt May. Like that was like I think the best Aunt May was the first one in the original
The
trilogy.
original one,
Like, I thought she was actually a very traditional Aunt May in
Mhm.
line with the comic books. So they did a little bit something different with Sally Field.
Well, and especially in the middle, she just gotten younger. Because
Yeah.
you basically went from her to
Sally Field and now to
Marissa
Marissa
Tomei.
Tomei. Now
Don't get me wrong,
I
I
thought-
love that Marissa Tomei's Aunt May.
I thought the Sally Field Aunt May was absolutely horrible and miscast.
See, I didn't think
I didn't like
I,
her.
don't know,
at all.
I didn't think she was that bad. I just think that those movies were terribly written. And Jamie Foxx is a great actor. I really like Jamie Foxx,
Oh, and
but he was just
horrible.
He was terrible.
Like, I mean,
I just again, I don't think
Electro.
it's him. I think it's how the part was written. However he was directed
yeah.
and how that part was written, to me, did him an injustice because they
Yeah.
completely underutilized Jamie Foxx's skills.
I think that second Spider-Man movie, well, okay, you can't even say second trilogy because they never made a third
and
movie.
then with the third
The
film.
second movie was so bad that they never made a third movie.
Oh, that
And they
that
were
ended
they
the
were
series.
gearing for a third movie.
They were gearing for Sinister Six.
Right, exactly.
And
They
that
were going
film-
for Sinister Six.
That film shut it down.
Yep,
And
and
they put it on
that
ice.
movie is one of the worst superhero movies I have ever seen. It was so bad.
You know, I mean, I guess we can all thank though that film for getting Tom Holland in the MCU and the Spider-Man because I think because
Yeah.
of that, Sony didn't know what they were going to do or how they could do a story right, and I think
So-
that's how the deal came between
They were better.
Marvel
They were probably
and
better
Sony.
off selling it back and getting some just money off
Yeah.
the price and the property.
But you know, but now listen. But we get to Far From Home. The one thing that's really interesting is the very end scene for Spider-Man: Homecoming is something different. Aunt May finds out that her nephew. I'm sorry, that her nephew is Spider-Man.
Yeah,
You know, the end scene is where Spider-Man, Tom Holland gets the suit back from Tony Stark, and he puts it on, and then before he puts the mask on, May's there, and all of a sudden she turns around and she's like, "What the?" And then the movie ends. That's not addressed at all.
Mhm.
And I'm actually kind of shocked that it wasn't. I was like hoping to see or hear some type of line because I can't see her character being okay with her nephew being Spider-Man and risking his life the way that he does because he's still very young. He's in high school still.
Yeah.
You know, he's not in college or working at the Daily Bugle, nothing like that. He's still in high school.
yeah.
So I'm really shocked that that wasn't addressed, even in a throwaway line, like, "Oh yeah, remember when I found you with the costume on?" Like nothing like that gets addressed. And in fact, when we first see them together, and one of their opening scenes is they're at a charity event, and she's basically using her nephew's popularity as Spider-Man to actually try to get fundraising for all the people that got blipped.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
By the way,
talk about that, too.
spoilers, please. You know, we you know that we're doing spoilers, guys. And, you know, they come backstage and they're high-fiving each other, and it's good. And this is the scene that you see in the trailer, and they're having such a good time.
Well, okay, so one of the parts in that scene that I didn't like was when Peter Parker was dressed up as Spider-Man in front of the audience, he was at a loss for words.
Yeah.
Like he was like, so I don't know if he was self-conscious or like, and it's like, not for nothing, one of the pivotal personality traits of Spider-Man is that, you know, Peter Parker's a little, you know, he's a little quirky and unsure of himself when he's Peter Parker. But when he's Spider-Man, he is never at a loss for words. He's always, you know, he's
got the quips.
He's got the quips. He's got the one-liners. He's always comfortable as Spider-Man. You know, he can always like. It's almost like two different personalities. You know, so I was watching him as Spider-Man being like all stuffy, and I'm like, that's, you know, Spider-Man was almost never like that ever
Yeah, but
in
there's
the history of the character.
But I think there's a difference between being put on the spot and then just being in the moment. And I think when he's fighting, the villains and all that stuff just starts coming out of his mouth. He's in the moment. Whereas this here, he's being put on the spot and he's next to his, I don't know, he's next to his aunt.
Right.
I can see like the hesitation and like what is he supposed to say to help raise funds. Like I can kind of buy into that. But
Now, so go ahead.
I don't know. I was just gonna say, like, we get backstage and then Happy comes in, and I think, like, I am so happy that Jon Favreau was returning as Happy in this movie, and it makes such sense since Tony Stark is gone now after Endgame, and especially with Homecoming, where Happy really was kind of overseeing Tom Holland's character. It was overwatching Peter Parker. That now he's kind of still overseeing all this. And I think it was kind of probably one of those things where, like, maybe, Stark was probably hoping that Happy would just kind of continue to kind of oversee and nurture Peter Parker a little bit. But I think the best parts are the scenes between him and Marissa Tomei, him and Aunt May. I mean, I have to say, like, that's really good stuff. I really did enjoy that.
Yeah, no, I think Marissa Tomei is actually doing very well as Aunt May. But, it's a very different Aunt May, and I'm, so for me,
she's an MCU version of Aunt May, and that's the only way to put it.
Yeah,
like she fits the context of the MCU, not the comic book version,
right?
But
and I'm okay with them. Like, I'm okay with people doing things differently. Like, I'm not such a purist where I'm like, well, that's not how it was in the comic book. But to me, I just feel like this Spider-Man's Marvel Cinematic Universe cast of characters is so radically different from their counterparts in the comic books. So you have, like, the characters of Aunt May, Mary Jane Watson, Ned Leeds, Flash Thompson, and now they introduced Betty Brant in this film as well.
No, Betty Brant was in the first
one. Oh, Betty Brant is in the first one.
Yeah, so it's her character still when she's like doing like the morning like news.
Oh, see, I don't remember. Oh,
she's in it.
She's in it not that much in the first one.
No. She just basically does like one or two of those like videos, and I think like that's
so you have like these 5 characters that are very deeply entrenched in the Spider-Man comics, and what they did is they made it. I mean, in the comic books, they're all white guys and white girls. In this movie, in this version of them, they made it a racially diverse group, which I'm okay with that.
Yeah, it's modern now.
It's modern, but they changed the personalities and characterizations of all the characters as well.
I think that's probably the bigger gripe. I don't care about them changing the
like, I think, and that's it. I think they changed too much. They're completely different characters.
Like, Flash to me is supposed to be like a big bully, and like this kid, and
they're just not.
They hired a kid that's smaller than Tom Holland.
Yeah,
like the kid that's Flash is to me is smaller than Tom. So I'm like, he's not intimidating to me, but like that's what Flash is supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
So like I would have, the king. You couldn't have gotten someone that was a little bit like.
I just feel like they changed the mythos too much. They went too far in this version. They changed the personalities. They changed the racial profiles, and these characters have almost no similarity in any way to their original counterparts that you've seen, except maybe like for Betty Brant. Betty Brant is a little bit more along the lines of her character in the comics.
See, I don't know too much about. I forget about Ned Leeds.
I didn't even realize that guy was Ned Leeds in the first film.
Oh, really?
I didn't know who he was, and
you just didn't remember his name when you said it.
I didn't realize. Yeah, I didn't make the connection, and then once they said Ned, and I'm like, and he was hooking up with Betty Brant, because in the comics I think Ned does hook up with Betty Brant, and I'm like, oh my God, that's Ned Leeds. I'm like, you got to be kidding me, and I'm just like. Sometimes they do these types of changes, and it's like in a group of 5 or 6 characters, they do a different spin on one of them, but to do a different spin on all of them, it just like it makes them unrecognizable in my opinion, and now it's just the only thing in common they have with the original characters is the name. That's the only thing in common.
Well, I think that's kind of what they were going for too, because
Yeah.
you got to think about it also. Like this is almost as if the Spider-Man comics didn't exist
Yeah, but they're all
when they were making this.
Yeah, but they're all based. At the end of the day, almost all of that is based on the comic books in some capacity.
Right.
That's
those
the
are-
material they're pulling.
But those were all characters that were created in the '60s compared to like the modernizing what they have now. Like I actually thought the only thing I probably my biggest gripe is the fact that they don't call MJ Mary Jane. I actually don't remember what her actual what Zendaya's like her real name is.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's not Mary Jane. It was whatever she says it at the very end of Homecoming. Her middle and her first and middle name, and then but she just likes going called by MJ.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, okay, so I guess this is going to be our Mary Jane for this series. But I think that was my only like gripe with the fact that she wasn't actually like, what was the problem of just having her as Mary Jane?
Yeah.
Like that was the only thing I would have liked to have seen.
And now that being said, it's like, okay, well, they're doing something very different, but are they doing it well? And that's the thing.
Well, she's a strong character.
I don't know that they're doing it they're not doing it bad. I just don't think they're doing it good.
I find she's the one person.
I find her character. I actually find her character a little, almost like, I almost feel like it's contradictory at times, because a lot of times she comes off as being like very like mature and standoffish and aloof and smart and philosophical.
Yes.
And then other times she's actually just very vulnerable and very insecure. And I'm like, okay, you're either one or the other.
But those early
both.
Teenagers, that's exactly what you are, though. Like
So
you put that
so
wall
is she
up.
only putting up a front? Is it a
so
front?
I think that's exactly what that is, and I think that kind of does run with those characters' ages, where that's exactly what they would do. They would put up the front to seem like they're strong, but they are really vulnerable.
I think one of the things I didn't care for much about this film, I think, was the way some of the characters, all the like normal human characters were presented, like whether they be the classmates or the teachers, is that they were very tongue-in-cheek, caricature, cardboard storylines. Like
the teachers were.
Yeah, the teachers
big time.
Like I thought the whole romance, the way the romance between Ned Leeds and Betty Brant played out, was very cartoonish and child. Like
it was more or less just like, okay, here we need to get these two together.
Yeah, and like the way
they're gonna get together on the plane.
Yeah, and the way they carried themselves throughout the film, it was just very like, it just didn't seem realistic. It just didn't seem like they were like really hooking up. It was just it was like goofy. Like all the interactions, a lot of them were just goofy. I don't know. A lot of the way this movie was made, to me, it was like reading a 1960s comic book, like where things just happened and people got to where they needed. People were just happened to be there, and it was like, to me, it was just a very poorly written, strung together 60s comic book, and not even a Marvel 60s comic book. I think it to me it was more like along the lines of like a DC 60s comic book, where stuff just happened. And
is that supposed to be an insult?
I don't mean it to be an insult, but like you read a lot of these Silver Age 60s DC books, and it's just a lot of them are goofy. Marvel was different, where they really tried to. There was much more continuity. They tried to make things more sense, make the characters more human and realistic. And I felt these characters were very unrealistic in how they were portrayed. They were just, they were just there. They were like just puppets. People wouldn't really act that way.
So I think what we really need to address right now is the 5-year gap.
Oh.
So this was probably my biggest question.
They're killing me.
My biggest question going into this film, and I think John and I had talked about this even like prior to, was once Endgame happened and you found out that the 5-year jump sticks. Okay, so after they do everything they do with the times, with all the Infinity Stones, they put everything back. The 5-year gap has occurred.
Yeah, everybody that was blipped out
and comes back at the same age that they were, but it's 5 years later.
And okay, not for nothing. And this is to me the problem and the fault in how they finished off the entire storyline with Thanos. I really think Endgame should have written it in a way where it negated what Thanos did, as opposed to fixing it 5 years later. Because
I think they were trying to not cheapen what happened. I think I understand why they did what they did, because if you sometimes when you're using the time, when you're using
so
time,
many
and you're going
problems
back,
with the way they did
you're
it.
going to end up cheapening what did occur and the people that did actually die and sacrifice themselves. So I think
Well,
I
no,
understand.
nobody sacrificed themselves. They just faded from existence.
Not Loki and Heimdall.
No,
like all those
you
characters that
wouldn't have.
died.
No, you would have never reversed any of that. They needed to stop the snap. They needed to figure out a way with the time stone and time travel or whatever to stop the snap from happening and put everything back, because the way they did it now, like story wise on the surface it works, but it's just so problematic. It makes no sense, because in all honesty, it is actually more devastating for the population of the Earth to double than to split in half, than to cut in half, in my opinion. When everybody came back, that didn't solve the problem. That actually would be a disaster, everybody coming back 5 years later.
Unless when they did the snap, Hulk's like, and give us more resources too.
Well, yeah, I don't know if Hulk's smart enough to do that. But at the end, you got to realize, after the snap, nobody knows that anybody's coming back. Life goes on, and
basically,
things are starting
and it did. So life did went on. People still actually went to school. So for all these kids that ended up fading away, and they were a part of the blip. Okay, as they call it. This is the term now that they've coined in Spider-Man: Far From Home, is the blip. You basically get an explanation from Betty Brant and this other kid and this like news bulletin. Okay, and they basically start showing kids that had blipped, were gone for 5 years, came back to the same age, and there were other kids that didn't get blipped, and they're 5 years older. Okay, but they're 5 years old, they're not in school anymore.
Right.
They'd actually moved on.
Yeah, I mean, like, life didn't end when everything got blipped. People went back to school. Like, there probably was, like,
less.
There was like a transition period where things were all in turmoil.
Right.
But like, humanity didn't stop what it was doing. Businesses still needed to be run. The whole entire
there was a period. There was
commerce
probably
of the
a down
earth.
period.
And
there was probably an initial down period, but at some point, people ended up going back to school.
Yeah,
and they actually
people went going back to work.
And this was like the worst part. So like they actually show at some point. There's a video clip of like the gymnasium where they're playing a basketball game in current time, and then all of a sudden the blip ends and all these kids start coming back, and it's 5 years later, and they're all back in the gym again. All these kids, and they're interrupting the game. It's like, okay, so all these kids were going to school, so. So you're telling me that the 50% randomness included Peter Parker and all of his friends,
sure,
with the exception of I think Flash Thompson didn't get flashed. No, he did.
No, he did.
He did. So all of these people got freaking blipped. Okay, Betty Brant got blipped, Peter Parker gets blipped, Ned gets blipped, MJ gets blipped, Flash Thompson gets blipped. So it just so happens that those people. I highly doubt in the randomness, what are the odds that those classmates all got blipped? To me, I think that probably drove the writers and Watts, who's the director in this film, that probably drove them wild, that they were going to have to come up with an explanation for that. And I guess this was the best that they came up with, but I still thought it was crap. Sorry, this was the one part of the film that really bothered me, was this 30-second explanation.
Everybody just came back. Like if me and you blipped out right now, and then all of a sudden 5 years from now we came back sitting at this table, life has gone on. People that we know have died.
Right.
People may have remarried. My job isn't there waiting for me to come back. It was filled by somebody else 5 years ago. But my company may have gone out of business.
But I will say, I will
Like,
give
it just
them.
made it sound like everybody showed up and just everything was back to normal.
No, it didn't though. But I will give them credit for this because that was the whole point of Aunt May. When Aunt May said she came back because she got blipped. She comes back. There are people in her apartment, and she was like they were like Asian or something like that. And they couldn't understand her. So that was the whole point of her charity, is that these were all people that got basically misplaced by the blip. And it's kind of like what John's talking about. It's like these people came back and life had gone on. People had taken over their homes because it's not going to stay vacant for 5 years.
Yeah.
So they do show that in the beginning. That's what that was all about.
It should be more devastating because this is happening everywhere,
right. But
in every single community in the world.
See, to me, like that
everywhere.
That could have been a real focal point of the film, was experiencing this 5-year gap.
Yeah.
And that was the adult part of the film that gets shown for the beginning, and then that's really it. And then we're back to school. This conversation, this little news bulletin happens, and then we move forward. We're like,
right.
Okay, accept it, swallow it, because here it is.
And everybody's in school. And not for nothing, keep in mind, in 5 years, the population is going to boom a little bit, I think. People, so it's not like when everybody came back, there's probably more people on Earth now than when they got blipped out. I have a feeling, it would just, to me, it would just be such a devastating thing, and they don't nearly touch on it enough. And now you have all these people in school, so like all these people are back in school, back in the grade where they are, and they're just walking around.
Yeah,
and it's
they're literally restarting their year.
Who is in that class? It should be all those people, and whoever else was in that class to begin with.
Right, originally.
Yeah, because school. I mean, the schools didn't just crumble and fall away. Like they were still people still going to school.
They were still going. I mean, to me, this was probably my biggest gripe with the film, was this whole explanation.
I think it's just a poorly executed. But it all stems from
Endgame. I agree with that. I don't put that on. I don't put that on the people in charge of writing Far From Home. I think that was a tough job for them to come up with an explanation. I don't think it was a great explanation, but I think that's more from the Russo brothers, unfortunately, with Endgame. And I enjoy Endgame a lot, but I think that was going to be a tough pill to swallow, I think, for a lot of people, this whole 5-year gap, and that was going to stand. And Far From Home is the first movie to experience it, and who knows if we're going to see that moving forward, if that's ever going to get talked about again after this film is done. So we'll have to wait and see on that.
And to me, one of the things about this movie this is the first film after Endgame. So it's kind of free floating. It's dealing with a little bit of the aftermath of Endgame, but it's not embedded in the Marvel Cinematic Universe like all the other films were, because all the other films were gearing towards
this
Endgame.
Yeah.
And now you're after Endgame, so now you have this Spider-Man movie, Far From Home, which is just it's just there, and they're just doing whatever they want. And to me, it's like it's a transition. To me, I'm hoping it's a transition period between the first big story arc and the next story arc that's coming. Because to me, it's like a filler movie.
Well, this definitely takes
place. To me, it definitely lacks any sort of additional elements that the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies tend to have, where how does this story arc? How is this feeding into
with the larger picture?
Yeah.
No, I get that, and I think this film definitely takes this film is much more scaled down, I think, than the prior films, because we're not dealing with Infinity Stones anymore. This is basically just looking at Peter Parker's world and where he's at right now. So
yeah, and to me the whole running around Europe was just just
it was just changing scenery,
just different locales, and it's just to me it's
Spider-Man's always taken place in New York. Every film has taken place in New York, with the exception of this one.
Yeah,
So
and
this is
they
the
just
first
keep
time they
they
take
keep
this
going
out.
to different countries and different cities and all that, and it's just like, it's just like it's like a tour de force of Europe, so to speak, because they're
Yeah.
they're all over the place, and it's I don't know, I just didn't have I just had a problem.
No, it's okay.
I had a problem with the characters, and I had a problem with like some of the storyline because it was just so light, and like a lot of people were thinking like these villains like the Elementals were like versions of Hydro Man. And
Well,
Sandman.
originally, when you started seeing that, when the way they had the promos cut, I can see every single person that thought that. I could understand it. Can't you?
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that you
No, yeah.
see this giant
Water.
body of sand, and then
water.
the way the water was working, you're
Yeah.
like, wow, we're getting Sandman
and
and Hydro Man. in this.
And then I don't know what they're doing with Earth
Wasn't
and
it like
Fire.
what,
Fire
the
and
fire
Wind.
one was not lava. Isn't it like a fire person?
Probably.
Wasn't there
Not
something like that?
Not in the Spider-Man universe. Not that I'm aware of.
But if, obviously we find out that these are actually elementals.
And they're not even real elementals.
They're not
completely
real.
fabricated.
So it was
So
very
now you have
interesting.
Mysterio.
So Mysterio comes into play, and he comes up with this elaborate scheme that he's from Earth.
Well, yeah. To
From a
me,
different- so now we
I found that to be very outlandish.
So now we start talking. Because in the preview we hear this talk, and we're like, whoa, are we talking multiverse now?
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. If they start talking multiverse, that opens up a world of possibilities.
Oh yeah, because
Because now you can talk about mutants and all this other stuff, and you can figure out, okay, now we know how to get them in. But it's all a goddamn hoax.
Yeah, now you talk about living tribunal people like there are people in charge of the multiverse,
Right.
big powers, so they come up with this whole thing where he's from an alternate reality and he's blah blah blah, and it's all BS, which is okay, but it's like Mysterio is pulling a fast one, and I'm like, if you're trying to pull a fast one, you should try to come up with something believable. And I felt like that whole to just say, well, I'm just gonna say I'm from another reality. Like that's believable.
But that was
Nick Fury's gonna believe that?
But his point makes sense in the current status of the MCU. His whole point was people will believe anything.
Yes.
If you're wearing a cape,
Yep.
people will believe anything.
Yeah.
And that's what he was proving.
It almost feels like a hidden criticism almost.
And it was amazing that he was right. He was 100%
Yeah.
right. And it even goes into the mid-credit scene where he ends up screwing Peter Parker, which we'll talk about that in a minute. But I think that I enjoyed this version of Mysterio. First of all, love Jake Gyllenhaal. I've been wanting to see him in a superhero film for a long time. Didn't realize he was going to end up being a villain. I thought he did a really good job at it. I really did.
See, and I didn't care for him throughout the entire movie. He just read through his lines. It was very low key, and he wasn't very passionate. When he was pretending to be a good guy, he wasn't very passionate as being a good guy. And when he finally was a bad guy, he still, in my opinion, he really wasn't even that passionate as a bad guy. To me, it was just, there are some actors and actresses today, in my opinion, that when they do their lines, they're not acting the part. They're just reading the lines, and I don't think they know how to act. And in this case, I felt a little bit. It was very wooden to me.
See, I feel like when he was doing the whole part before, so for a while, basically, Mysterio was trying to win over Peter Parker because he knows that Peter Parker has inherited Edith, which is this AI system defense system that Tony Stark came up with before he passed away, and he entrusted it to Peter Parker. So this entire, only battling these elementals, and he's getting Peter Parker's help, and Nick Fury's there with S.H.I.E.L.D., or at least with whatever remnants of S.H.I.E.L.D. that's left. He befriends him, and then in the very end, Peter's like, I can't handle this. I just want to be a kid in high school, and ends up giving the powers of Edith over to Mysterio, which is what he wanted to do the entire time.
Yeah.
I actually thought that was really smart how it went.
See,
because he basically kept commenting and making Peter feel good about himself as much as he could, but at the same time threw in little things that Peter would doubt himself enough to give him the glasses.
And to me, I found that a little unbelievable because I'm sitting there and I'm going, Mysterio's plan is entirely hinging
Yes.
on trying to get Peter Parker to, on his own, give him the glasses.
That's right.
And I'm like,
But he manipulates him.
that's a really big iffy end game. You're not trying to steal it from him. You're not trying to get it. You're waiting for someone to give it to you.
But this is where
That's a big big
listen, it's a
stretch.
big roll of the dice. But look what happens. You find out after he gets Edith, he had this whole slew of staff and people from Stark Industries that he has been using at his disposal, that Mysterio has been using to help him figure everything out. And he starts calling out the people by name and telling them, who figured out that it was going to Peter Parker, that this whole thing was being developed to begin with. Like, he had this planned out. Like, this was very methodically done. And I think we actually get to see that that bar scene.
No, I think it was very methodically done, but to me it was like there was no way to ensure that it was going to happen, and you're hoping someone else's personality brings it. Like it's not like at the end of the day, if Peter Parker just says, you know what, it's not a bad idea.
I'm still gonna hold on to Edith,
but I'm keeping them because they're mine and I need it, and he gave it to me. And that's not wrong for him to do that. Like, he doesn't have to give that away.
No, but I think enough occurs in the film, especially because Mysterio is the one that defeats the Elementals. It's not Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
Had Spider-Man defeated the Elementals, I think it would have been a different story. But the fact they weren't even real, and I think Mysterio knew that. Mysterio set up this whole thing from the start, knowing he was going to be the victor. It wasn't going to be Spider-Man. Yeah. And I think he was banking on Spider-Man seeing that Mysterio, that he's like, I'm the one that's going to save everybody, not you. And that was going to be enough to start to really push him over the edge and be like, you know what, I'm not ready for this yet. And he was right, because of course he turns it over to him, and Peter was gullible enough to do it. And I think that shows Peter's youth. He's still a teenager. He's not in his 20s. He doesn't know better yet.
Yeah.
And I think this movie, if it did anything, I think it made Peter Parker grow up a little bit.
I think I found it unbelievable in that scene where they were sitting at the bar and they're both like, just like they're in their costumes and they don't have their masks on. And I'm like, why doesn't Spider-Man have his mask on?
I was thinking the same thing. Like, to me, that made no sense. And in fact, you're in a public setting. I don't care if you're in Europe and people don't know.
Yeah, you're in a public setting.
You're typically in New York. I don't care. You don't have your mask on. In a day and age where people have smartphones and cameras where they can take video and pictures of you.
Yeah.
You're telling me you wouldn't have something on? Like, that to me made zero sense.
Now, granted, the whole thing was a holographic image being projected by Mysterio.
Right.
But
there were live people that were there.
Spider-Man didn't know that.
Not only did he not know that, but there were real people that were in there. Like, even after the hologram starts to fade and change, there were real people that were sitting at the tables. Yes, some of them faded away from being a full bar to a much smaller one, but there were live people that were in that scene.
No, but I thought they were part of the...
Some of them were part of the illusion, yes, but then others were not.
Yeah, so to me that was very, very odd.
And I did think, like, once Mysterio does get Edith and he does start basically putting on, they start developing like the next illusion, like the next show. Like, I feel like he really does step up and be like the jerk villain, saying, basically telling the staff, like, this is going to happen the way I want it.
Now, one thing I didn't understand was when you realized that all those battles were illusions. Projected by these drones, there were definitely instances where, like, things were being destroyed and people were, like, with the whole water guy.
Yeah.
Like, things are being destroyed.
Those are all from the drones.
What are the drones doing? They're shooting beams out.
Yeah.
And not
the drones were, not only were they fully automated, the drones had weapons and capabilities that could make all that happen.
Which seemed like really impressive technology. But so now you have like this fist of water that punches Peter Parker.
Right.
Like, he's wet.
Yeah.
It's real water.
Yeah.
So it's not an illusion.
That aspect of it wasn't. No, the physical damage is what these drones are capable of doing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, but the fact that the way that the optics look, because the drones are invisible, the drones are basically cloaked.
Right.
But they project that illusion. That was the whole point of having those projectors on there.
Okay.
So yeah, it was projecting like a fist of water or whatnot to like hit him, but it was basically the drone probably like popping him with something and like knocking him back.
Okay. So I mean, yeah, to me it seemed like a lot of. I don't know that they explained it that well because like everything looks like things are really happening and there is interaction. And then you realize that it's all being projected. It's like, well, if it all is illusion, then it has no substance. So they got to be faking it somehow.
But I think that was where the scene in the warehouse is really impressive, where he gets immersed inside all those drones. Where basically, so when Peter Parker actually starts to figure out that he screwed up by giving Mysterio the Edith, he goes to tell Nick Fury, and Nick Fury doesn't even realize that Mysterio is the problem.
Yeah. Well, then you find out that that's not even really.
And you find out that it's not even Mysterio. Oh, because what? Because that was Mysterio himself when he goes to him.
Yeah, a lot of the times it was an illusion, and if it really was Nick Fury, it wasn't Nick Fury. It was the Skrull, because Nick Fury was somewhere else.
Right, which you don't find that out till the post credit scene.
Yeah.
So
it's like, and not for nothing, that Skrull is not as smart as Nick Fury. Or has, in my opinion, has the knowledge. Like he's playing.
But I think that was the whole. But he even says that even in that scene. He's like, when people are asking about the Avengers, I don't know what to tell them. Like, where are you? Like,
yeah.
Are you coming back?
Yeah.
But I think that the illusion aspect was. I thought that was very impressive. I did think that made things very interesting. Although what was really killing me was why Peter's spider sense wasn't really going off a lot earlier in the film. It really comes into play in the later aspect of the film. It's almost like someone had to tell him, like, hey, did you forget you have your spider sense? Although in this film they call it his Peter tingle, which I did find funny.
I thought that was a little funny.
I thought that was funny, but I hope that that's not what they're going to call it going forward. I hope that's more of a joke.
And in all honesty, with the history of how Peter Parker's spider sense works, I almost feel like it should have been going off around Mysterio because Mysterio really was a bad guy.
But is it because that Peter wasn't perceiving any danger to begin with?
Well, see, that's the thing. Peter's spider sense can go off, and he's like, he doesn't know why.
Right.
And it's like a matter of something's wrong here. And like in theory, Peter Parker's spider sense at some in certain scenarios should have went off.
Yeah.
With Mysterio, when Mysterio was maybe really leaning into his own subversive plans.
Well, I was surprised. To me, if it was going to go off at any point in time, it should have gone off either the fight with the carnival night that they had, or in the bar when they were talking.
Yes, it should have went off in the bar.
Like in the bar, to me, that should have went off at that point in time. That something was wrong.
Right,
so that to me was a little upsetting.
Now, to me, I found the whole impromptu drone attack on the bus was completely absurd. Where it
was just like so out of character. Like I was like, I don't think.
Like he's calling a hit, like he accidentally calls a hit on his buddy, but at no point was he able to turn off the hit.
Like it was just basically like it was like a domino effect. Just like he couldn't get the lines. He couldn't say what he needed to say to stop the attack, and like whatever he was getting basically talked to twice at once. Like whoever was talking to him, Edith was talking to him at the same time, and then just whatever he was saying was conflicting with Edith, and it just made this drone attack actually happen.
And it went too far. And the fact that he was like, able to jump through the top of the bus
as the bus is traveling at like X miles.
Well, he could do that, but the thing is, he was able to do that unseen by anybody in the bus and do what he had to do.
Because they were all looking out the window.
But still, I'm just like, there was a lot of things that just happened that were just, I'm like goofy. That was a scene that created action, and it's like, all right, you could have. There had to be something better to do.
Yeah.
I think I found the scene where they show up in the town and the really crazy German girl calls him into the room,
who made the black costume?
Yeah, to put on the black costume, and then one of the kids from the bus comes in. It's just like is that really would have happened? Somebody would have walked in and saw them, like.
I can see that happening. I mean, listen,
it's unprofessional.
But listen, these are kids in another country. They're not reading signs. They think, oh yeah, this is the way of the bathroom. Then you go in this way.
But like the girl who's like gonna get Peter Parker to do this would have done something
to secure the door.
Yeah, right, exactly.
I agree.
Like she wouldn't have been like her boss is gonna be like, okay, rookie move. Why didn't you make sure no one can get in?
Yeah.
Like someone's gonna be like, that's her fault. And if she's like an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., like that wouldn't have happened.
So basically, like once Peter gets his butt handed to him by Mysterio in after they were in like the Europol or something like that, wherever they were, he ends up calling Happy, right? And Happy comes with the Stark jet and picks him up because at this point Peter doesn't know who he can trust because he's not sure about the illusions.
What gets him to that point is Mysterio's illusion gets him on these train tracks, and a
train basically comes and
So two problems with that. One, the train is not an illusion.
Right.
Was it just perfect timing? Did like Mysterio see the train coming and say, "Okay"?
We're just gonna follow the path there. Yeah, I think.
He couldn't have timed that. You know what I mean?
No, I think he did. I think he did that perfectly. He's all about I think his illusions are all about timing and being at the right place at the right time.
But he's got to be exactly at the right place at that right time.
Yeah,
now, not for nothing, that train hitting Peter Parker at that speed, I think that would have killed him. I'm trying to figure out the impact. Like either Spider-Man jumped out of the way, or he got hit by the train.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like it wasn't like he's hit by the train and now he's like splashed on the front of it and it's going 100 miles an hour and he went and he crawled around to the side.
Yeah.
Like there had to be they just made it look like he was standing there and he got hit.
I remember when the train hit him. I was like, ooh, you almost feel the impact of that.
Yeah, I think that could have been a fatal hit because you're talking about one of these super.
I think Mysterio was hoping on that.
You're not talking about a New York City subway train. You're talking about one of these super Euro bullet trains that are going really fast. And those things are really solid.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not a freaking subway train.
No,
I'm like, all right.
You're right. And then I think at the end, so Peter at this point doesn't know who to call because he doesn't know who he trusts. So he ends up because at this point he feels that Mysterio is tracking his communication.
Yeah.
And he's so the only person that he knows he could actually end up calling was Happy, and he uses some other guy's cell phone because he's in a weird town, right? He's in some foreign town, and it's just him. He's like, he has some guy. Can I use your phone? And he ends up calling Happy. So Happy comes on the jet, picks him up, and he basically has a heart-to-heart with him about Tony Stark, and he's like, I can't do it. I can't live up to him. And Happy tells him, he's like, nobody can.
Nobody can.
And I think that was the right line. I think this was a good conversation for him to have and for him to hear. I think one of the coolest parts about this scene is when he's Peter starts to feel realize what he has to do, and he tells Happy, and he's like, all right, well, no, tell me right now, what do we have to go and do, because we're just hovering over a field, what do we go do?
Yeah.
And then he starts telling him, and then Happy's like, all right, he's like, hit back here, because Peter's like, I need a suit because he's all totorn up. And he's like, I got that covered. And so he opens up the back of the jet, and Peter goes back there, and it's basically this whole giant computer image thing of him just basically mimicking Iron Man 1, where Tony's putting together his Iron Man suit. And not only that, you got Happy flicks on the music, and it's AC/DC, it's Back in Black. And that's the opening to Iron Man 1. Which is great. These were all such great callbacks to the first.
And I didn't catch that. Okay.
And so and then Tom Holland at one point reaches in and pulls his hand up like this, just like Robert Downey Jr. did in the first Iron Man in the suit, and he basically just starts playing with everything. And it was such a cool moment. Like I really, really enjoyed that callback to the first Iron Man.
I think this is one of my questions, and maybe I don't know if this makes sense, but okay, so Tony Stark is dead, right?
Yes.
So how is all his technology being maintained? Like
Pepper.
Pepper's maintaining it.
I'm assuming that she's
Okay.
the head of Stark Industries at this point.
Okay, so all these things are still in place and still working. Okay, I don't buy that.
Yeah, I would think that would be the only way that would still happen.
Okay.
Um,
Because like all of his technology is not like a perpetual motion machine. It's just not going on its own. Like someone's gotta,
yeah,
maintain it and make it available. It's just not there forever. Like
Right.
like
but I'm
it's
sure.
not self-maintaining.
No, but I also think that Stark had contingencies, which is what that giant satellite is out in space.
Yeah.
So I think in that respect, in that regard, like he had stuff I think set up in case for the worst. But I thought that was that to me is probably one of the coolest moments in this movie is that throwback to Iron Man 1 when you see those movements being mimicked and the music from that film. So to me that was really cool.
So I want to talk about one of the scenes that I absolutely hated in this movie. There's a scene where all the kids are going to the opera,
Yeah.
and Spider-Man's got to go because one of the elementals is coming, and so he leaves. But like his friends, like they want to leave and follow him, but they can't follow him. They don't know where he's going. So Mary Jane leaves, MJ leaves, and then Ned and Betty leave. And I don't think either of them are following each other. Like I don't think Ned and Betty are following MJ. I think they're both just.
I think they're just looking to get out to
They're
go
both
to
just
that
heading out.
festival. Yeah.
So there's this giant festival going on in the city. Giant. Thousands of people. And MJ and Ned and Betty both wind up exactly in the little square, big, or even if it's a big square, where Spider-Man is perched waiting for the elemental to show up. And MJ is literally right there where the elemental is coming as Ned and Betty get on the Ferris wheel on the other side of the square. And you're just sitting there. It's like, okay, and then all of a sudden, most of the people in the place disappear, except these two. The elemental shows up, and it's a whole big battle. And now you just have this scene where, like, MJ's in this background watching, and lo and behold, that one of the drones loses its projectors, and that goes flying, and boop, 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 boop,
Right in front of
bounces right in front of MJ. And now you also have the scene, which to me was even more absurd, is, Spider-Man trying to save Ned and Betty on the Ferris wheel from the elemental. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, how did this come together? Like, you just wanted to have a scene where Spider-Man saving his friends. And it's like how you put this all together is just ridiculous. And to me, it's like reading a comic from the 60s where they just happen to walk out somewhere, and then the next panel, they're getting on the Ferris wheel, and they're up there, and Spider-Man save, and I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, you just set up this scene, but it's just so absurd how everybody got there.
It was Night Monkey that saved him.
And he calls him Night Monkey, and then now all of a sudden everybody knows about it. I don't know how that happened either. And it's just, and that was kind of funny, like the whole Night Monkey thing.
Yeah.
But it was just, to me, that was just a little goofy. But I thought that was kind of funny. But I'm just watching this. I'm like, oh, here we go. Spider-Man's going to be saving Ned and Betty. I'm like, they just happen to run out there. Let's get on the Ferris wheel. And it's literally right across from where the whole battle is. And it's just like, come on. And then at the end, when like MJ, like everybody disappears. Like MJ needs to find Peter Parker. And like they're just walking out on the bridge. There's nobody else there. And they just meet. And like everything just kind of happens. The whole scene where they're like running into the vault with the crown jewels.
The crown jewels.
Like,
so this is the end of the film.
Nobody's guarding anything, and they're able to get into there and close the vault, like lock themselves into the vault where the crown jewels. And I'm just like none of this is happening in the real world. It's all happening in a comic book world.
Yeah.
Which normally makes sense, except this is not your all these movies take place in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and the logics that are happening here are not following that logic. And I think that it falls from it stems from the fact that it's a post Avengers Endgame film.
Yeah.
They're basically like, we can have fun because we don't even gotta.
It's not tying.
All we gotta do is
yeah.
all we gotta do is mention the blip a little bit because we're still living in the blip, but we don't gotta deal with something coming down the road.
Right.
There's nothing coming down in this movie. There's nothing down the road.
Like I said before, everything kind of deals with Peter in his own little world with this. I thought the ending. The ending is interesting because we don't. The whole point about Mysterio is that we don't really know what's real.
You don't even know if he's really dead.
So the end of the film, Peter basically has a standoff with Mysterio, and Mysterio is using all these drones that now he has control over because he has Edith, and he's trying to basically just kill off Peter Parker at this point. Like
I thought the final battle with like these hundreds of drones against Peter Parker was a little over the top.
I mean, it's a little overwhelmed. I think he would have been very overwhelmed because he's by himself with all of those drones.
And a lot of his stuff is in midair. Yeah. And I'm like, I feel like the amount of firepower and drones there, I think he was outnumbered. He was outmanned. He was outgunned.
There was a lot with that.
I'm like
he really relied on his acrobatics to get through all this.
It's almost like if you're flying through the air and you got 30 to 50 drones from all different angles shooting at you, it's not like you're on the ground and you're in the air. There's only so much you can do while you're flying through the air. They're going to be like, all right, if 50 of us shoot him, at least one of us is going to get him. Yeah. Probably 20 of us are going to get him.
I think that was
he was seamless.
There was definitely a little point of
it seemed over the top to me.
Yeah, a little bit much towards the end. Oh, I definitely agree with that. I thought that end fight scene was a bit much. I thought the showdown with Mysterio was actually pretty cool though. In that tunnel that they were in, that connector bridge that they were on together. Yeah. And then basically at the very end, Spider-Man ends up stopping him. And in doing so, he's actually he gets shot by one of his own drones, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't he get shot by one of his own drones? Mysterio gets shot by one of his own drones. And at this point, Peter's able to get the glasses back and retake control of Edith, and he shuts down all the drones.
That I don't understand, because you can't steal Edith. You have to
transfer control.
You have to transfer control.
Yeah.
So the only way Mysterio was able to get Edith was because Peter Parker transferred control.
Right. So you would think Mysterio would have to transfer control back to Peter, and that doesn't happen. Peter just takes the glasses and tells Edith, "I'm taking control
I'm
again."
Back. And you know what? I don't think it works.
I don't think it works that way either. Yeah. I think when Peter gave Mysterio full control, he gave Mysterio full control. Like, there's no way that Peter should just put the glasses back.
Yeah.
I think Edith should have said.
Edith would have said, "Sorry, you're not in charge."
Yeah.
I
think so too.
And this is this is not us being picky. The movie set the rule.
Oh, you set the rule.
The movie set the rule,
Absolutely.
and then it broke it. Now, sometimes me and Chris will argue that the rules don't make sense. But if they set the rule, it's there.
And I'm okay.
And then when they break it,
I'm okay.
And I was actually okay with that rule.
I'm okay.
I was okay with that rule.
That makes sense.
But they, just to get the story where they needed to go.
Yeah.
They broke the rule.
That was a little disappointing thing, because as soon as he puts the glasses on, and he's like, I'm thinking to myself, he can't just take it back, because I kept thinking the entire time when he's having the showdown, I'm like, how is he going to get Mysterio to say the words, "I give Peter control back"?
Yeah,
that was going through my head the entire time, and he just puts the glasses back.
And I think subconsciously I was thinking of that too. Like,
he says,
"I'm like, do that? How's he going to get it?"
That's
back?
how he does it.
It makes no sense.
And then at that point, all the drones that remained, because so I guess that whole fight with all the drones, he doesn't destroy all of them. There are still thousands of drones or hundreds of drones that he doesn't destroy. That basically just go right back up into space, into back into the giant satellite that Stark has. Yeah. So, and then at that point in time, we see Mysterio pass away, and that's when he says to him, people will believe anything nowadays.
Yeah, and that's what, and you can use that in so many scenarios because I'll be honest with you, I think a lot of people write these scripts, and I think they know it doesn't make perfect sense, and they don't care because it's enough. It makes enough sense on the surface to get by, but if you really think about it,
Well,
it
you're going
doesn't
to
make
get
sense.
well, it's basically you're going to get the general audience member to
Who
buy into it and just accept
right?
it.
Because I think the general audience member isn't discriminatory. They're just sitting there.
They're just going to take it
and
in.
they just take it in, and
Yeah.
that's it. And not for nothing, I think the writers do that this way because they know they can get away with it. And to me, it's a little bit insulting to the moviegoer. You should be going out of your way to make it make sense. Because not for nothing, this is your job. Like you're
writing the story.
You should be doing your job well.
Yeah.
If you're writing the story as good as I could write it, then why are you getting paid all this money?
Yeah, I mean that was a little tough to bite down. Like I said, I don't think this movie's perfect. I don't think this movie's better than Homecoming. I like parts of this film really, really well. I think parts of this film really build Peter's character quite a bit. I think a lot of it was character development for Peter Parker throughout this whole film, like where he starts to where he ends. I think we get to this mid-credit scene, and the mid-credit scene is very interesting because not only do we see Peter Parker, we see Spider-Man's identity get outed as Peter Parker in Times Square. Or I don't know if it's Times Square, but maybe it's like by Madison Square Garden. It's like right around there. It's like one of the giant like LCD screens that's out and about,
Probably Times Square.
and everybody's watching. And we see a doctored video from Mysterio that basically puts Peter Parker as not caring about the lives of everybody that were in London. And he basically, Mysterio doctors the video to make it look like it was Peter Parker that was just going to look to kill everybody because he wanted to be the next Iron Man. And Mysterio says Spider-Man is Peter Parker, and that was crazy. Like that's very interesting.
Now his identity.
So
is that.
I mean, like just like the mirror image of at the end of Iron Man 1, Tony Stark says, "I am Iron Man," and comes out and admits it.
Yeah.
And now Peter Parker, his identity gets outed, and he doesn't want that.
Well, I mean, not for nothing. He lands on the street with MJ and puts her down, and like everyone's
there.
A bunch of people were probably taking his picture, and they were like, anybody might have been able to connect the dots. Like, who's this person?
Who's the girl?
Who's the girl? And not for nothing, her identity's not a secret. Someone, with social media today, I guarantee you, almost anybody could figure out who it is just with facial recognition.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's Peter.
Right? No, but I mean, but they should be a little bit more cautious.
Yeah.
Because if you keep doing that,
yeah.
it's something.
But to me, the coolest thing about that mid-credit scene is who the news report comes from.
J. Jonah Jameson.
So we get the
played
Daily
by,
Bugle.
What the hell's his name?
J.K. Simmons.
J.K. Simmons, yeah.
So we get the
and
original.
He's from the original trilogy.
The original Sam Raimi trilogy.
Because not for nothing, he was perfect as J. Jonah Jameson.
He was excellent, and I'm so happy he's back.
That's funny.
I can't wait to see what he does in the next film. And
I hope it's not just a cameo.
I hope he has a huge role in the next film because he was so good in those first 3 films. I'm really happy to see that he was back because I've always wondered since they were going to do with the Amazing Spider-Man films with Andrew Garfield, I was wondering who was going to play J. Jonah Jameson, and I was like, oh, they could probably just bring J.K. Simmons back for that, and people were like, no, it's a different cast. Why would they do that? But I'm like, I don't know. It's some side role, like smaller roles like that. I feel like you can get away with that.
And I really hope for the third movie. I don't know who the villain is for the third movie.
I think Kraven is being heavily looked at as the
villain. That to me makes sense because he is in my opinion, the odds-on favorite. He is the biggest Spider-Man villain that has not been adapted in any capacity.
Well, I feel like you're going to see,
and he's a cool villain.
I feel like you'll probably see again multiple villains. I think you'll see Kraven.
Oh, you'll probably see and
I think
there's always more. They haven't touched them all.
And I think even so, I think they might even go back to possibly Vulture from Homecoming and bring Michael Keaton back. And I think they could even bring back the guy that was playing Scorpion.
Not for nothing. They should be bringing the Scorpion back because he.
You remember that the post-credit
Yeah,
scene, right?
yeah. He really didn't. Did he become?
No, he
the
didn't.
Scorpion?
He wasn't Scorpion yet.
He wasn't Scorpion yet.
No, I
Yeah.
think that would be good to bring him
Yeah,
back.
and now Scorpion is that's a long-standing Spider-Man villain.
Yeah.
I want to say I think he came out in Spider-Man number 20.
Yeah.
I think that's right.
But like,
and Scorpion is actually pretty cool. And not for nothing. Okay, so Scorpion's origin is very much linked to J. Jonah Jameson.
Okay.
In the comics, at least.
So at least they could do something like that. I mean, I think
that's what they do with maybe J.K. Simmons.
I'm hoping that they do something like that. But I think at some point we are going to see something with the Sinister Six, because it's all
that would be smart.
It's all setting up. If we get someone like either Kraven or, maybe Kraven at first comes in as a villain, but then ends up helping Spider-Man to defeat the Sinister Six.
Sure.
Sinister Six. So that's a possibility as well.
And I do gotta say, I am a big fan of Marissa Tomei as Aunt May. As much as it is very much against, she was her character is very,
the way she plays
is very
I think is great.
It is very well.
I think the way that she plays for Peter, and she tries to guide him a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Again, this is so different because May knows his identity in this. And then just her interactions with Happy, and then how that makes Peter feel between their two interactions. I think it's great.
Yeah, it's good tension.
It really is, and I think it just plays off really, really well. I mean, I have to say, I think the casting is very well done so far.
So needless to say, this is one of my least favorite Marvel Cinematic Universe movies. And I would say that my least favorite,
Thor: Dark World.
I mean,
Thor: Dark World.
I didn't hate Thor. I thought Thor: Dark World was just kind of there, but I didn't hate it. I really did not like Iron Man 3.
Oh, Iron Man 3 wasn't. Yeah.
I really did not like Ant-Man and the Wasp. I really didn't, and I really did not like this movie. And I think those are I think those really are my bottom three.
Yeah. But listen, if you liked Spider-Man: Homecoming, most likely you'll enjoy this film. I think you're going to have stuff that you'll have problems with. John and I, you might say that we nitpick a couple of things on this film. That's fine. Maybe we are kind of like really just picking in little things out that really don't really matter that much and aren't big things. But we do think overall that we definitely touched on things that I thought were both good about this film and not so good about this film, and it should make you think about that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, overall, I don't think Tom Holland's going anywhere. I think he's the future of the MCU, along probably with, I think, Black Panther and Captain Marvel. I think those are going to be the big three being pushed forward.
There's other characters I think that are coming up soon. I know you said that I think there's a Morbius movie.
There's a Morbius movie in effect. I don't know if that's through Sony though. I think that might be through Sony. I don't know if that's through MCU.
I'm pretty sure I heard that they're doing the Eternals.
Yeah, the Eternals is something that's coming up.
And Shang-Chi, Master of Kung Fu.
Yeah, and that's coming up.
Go figure. So I mean, not for nothing. Like we said, the mutants are coming, the Fantastic Four are coming. So I really think when we get the Fantastic Four, I think they're going to do some Mariner in there at some point.
I would hope that they bring some Mariner in.
It would
totally especially with the success that Aquaman had, I would think that they would want to do some Mariner.
Yeah, and so Mariner is older than Aquaman. So Mariner's been around before Aquaman.
Yep.
I think I would like to think they're going to bring Moon Knight in. Again, if the whole Netflix is dead,
Moon Knight would have been perfect for Netflix. But we have to see what's going on with the Disney streaming service, the Disney Plus, because I think right now you have the Falcon with the Winter Soldier. You've got that series that's coming out. Is Black Widow? No, Black Widow's getting her own movie. That's filming right now.
Black Widow's dead.
Well, she's getting a movie. She's dead, but she's getting a movie. Most likely taking place
Origin
before.
movie.
Most likely a flashback film.
Okay.
And then I think even Vision and Scarlet Witch are getting a Disney Plus streaming show.
Okay.
So there is definitely a possibility on the streaming service for a lot of these smaller Marvel characters to start getting their own series. I don't know if they're gonna. I don't know if you want to say films. I don't know what's going to happen yet with that, but I think there's a lot of possibilities for them.
And I'll be honest with you, I think if they start to phase Hulk out, because he's kind of on his way out, bring in She-Hulk.
Bring in She-Hulk, absolutely.
There's still a lot of Marvel characters that have not touched, and there's hundreds of villains. They still have hundreds of villains to choose from.
No, I think
because there's a lot more villains than there are superheroes.
I think
there's so many superheroes.
I think there's
there's
still a lot of opportunity with the future, and now that Marvel has all the Fox characters.
Yeah, and it just shows you how much how innovative and how how expansive what Marvel did in the 60s and 70s was, because most of these characters came out in a 20-year time period from 1961 to 1981. I mean, literally, almost all of them were all introduced in that 20-year period.
Yeah.
Because prior to that, there were some original characters from the 40s when Timely Comics, but you're really just talking about, Captain America and Bucky, Submariner, the original Human Torch, which is not the same as the Fantastic Four Human Torch, and villains like the Red Skull, and but like it's only a handful of characters. Most of these characters were created by Stan Lee and Roy Thomas in the 60s and the 70s. A couple other writers as well, but they created, in my opinion, I think they created most of them. They're just mining that, and they're not done. There's so much they still haven't done.
There's so much that's going to happen. I think over the next, 5 to 10 years, there's going to be a lot of interesting characters that get introduced. So I think, guys, with that, I think we're done with this review.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think so. I don't know what's next on the horizon for us. Probably Lion King.
Live action Lion King is probably going to be next. Then we'll see what's coming out over the next few weeks.
Yeah.
But guys, I think with that, we're going to sign off. We hope you enjoyed this review.
Yep.
Take care and enjoy the rest of your night. Take care. Bye.
Have a good one.